In this video, we will see how to map issue types between Jira and Azure DevOps. So when you create a certain type of ticket in Jira, whether it's a story, task, bug, feature, whatever, you want to map it in a custom manner so that a corresponding item gets created on the Azure DevOps side. As an example, I have picked a story and a task. So if on the Jira side I create a story, I want to create a corresponding user story on the Azure DevOps side. And similarly, if I create a task on the Jira side, I would like it to be mapped to a feature on the Azure DevOps side. Now, if you go to the Azure work items, there is a feature type and a user story type. So when a story arrives from Jira, we want a user story to be created in Azure DevOps. And when a task arrives from Jira, we would like a feature created in Azure DevOps. And in order to do that, we need to start by thinking about the outgoing and the incoming again. This time, Jira is actually the outgoing party, and all we need from it is the type. So basically, we need to understand what type of ticket was created in Jira, and that has already been populated in line number 2 into a variable called replica.type. Now that Jira is sending over the type of ticket it's creating, Azure DevOps needs to make a mapping to use that information. In order to do that, let's go to the incoming sync script of Azure DevOps. How it's currently happening is within the first sync block. This block gets executed for the very first time when the ticket arrives on the Azure DevOps end. Basically, we're reading the type of ticket arriving from the Jira side, the same replica.type variable. So we read the ticket type from Jira, and Azure DevOps will try to find a matching type within Azure DevOps. So if it matches 100%, then it will assign that work item type to that item. But if it doesn't find a corresponding type, it will default to task. As you might have noticed, this is done by using the Elvis operator that we spoke about earlier in the course. So if the first value is null, then it defaults to a second on, otherwise it uses the first. So for this type of example, I'm going to get rid of the default value and I'll create a map to map the issue type. Now remember that we spoke about 2 examples, so we'll use 2 entries. The first entry is that if it's a story on the Jira side, we would like to create a user story type of work item on the Azure DevOps side. And the second one is that if a task arrives from Jira, we would like to create that as a feature within Azure DevOps. And that's the mapping created between the 2 issue types. Now we will reference this type map to see what has arrived from the other end. And this is the only change we need to make. So basically, we read the replica.type. Let's say it's a story arriving from Jira, so replica.type will represent story. And then we reference the type map to pick the corresponding value, which in this case is a user story. Let's publish our changes and do a quick test to see what is happening. I'll create a story. Okay? Here's my story, and let's exalate it. Now I expect this to become user story on the other side. Let's also create a task. And let's exalate that task as well. As you remember, I expect this to become a feature on the other side. So the first ticket is already exalated, and let's check what happened. All right, as you see, the work item type is user story, and that's what we expected. Now let's check on our task. Yeah, that's synchronized as well. So this should become a feature on the Azure DevOps side. And that's it. This is how you can use many-to-many mapping to create an issue map and then just synchronize any types you like.